All right, let's see here. All right, man, you wanna pop in? You wanna jump in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Ready to go?
Let's go in.
All right. We'll say that the intro music just ended. Okay. Hello, this is the Panhandle Primate podcast. I'm your host Dexter Kearley. I'm here with John. What do most people call you?
So,
Like, what is your most used nomenclature?
I prefer John-Ruben.
Mhm.
That's my full name. It's one name. It's hyphenated.
John-Ruben hyphenated.
Some people call me just John because it's just like easier.
Mhm.
A lot of my musician friends call me John. My work friends, like at where I work, Palace, they know me as John-Ruben.
Mhm.
A few people still refer to me as JR because I went by that for a while.
Who was that was telling me JR? Somebody was calling you JR.
I'm trying to think.
And I'm trying to think of who it was, but they knew you from, I don't know, I guess a long time ago.
They probably knew me from church or something, like old church or something like that.
Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So John-Ruben.
So John-Ruben is what I prefer, but you can get away with John.
Well, see, this is one of the funny things about like the new culture is like the first time I saw you was on Instagram.
Right.
And I was trying to remember that engagement. If I stumbled onto you, and I'm pretty sure I did, because I'm pretty sure I watched your drumming videos.
Okay.
Anyway, but it seemed like we had some like interaction pretty early on, but it was interesting because I only knew you by your Instagram handle.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's just kind of interesting. Like I see all these people even around town. Sometimes I'll see somebody and their Instagram handle pops into my head. I'm like, that's not their name, dude. You know, like that's just their like
presence.
That's not their. It's weird, you know. Damn, where was I going with that? I don't know. So John-Ruben.
John-Ruben. Yeah.
All right, cool. So you just mentioned you work at Palace Coffee, right? And they're your lead barista?
The lead barista at the downtown Amarillo location.
And one of the questions I was going to ask you, how active was your role in their championships?
Pretty active. We just hosted preliminary rounds a couple weeks ago for the the National Coffee Championships. So we hosted two of the competitions. One is the Barista competition, the other is the Brewers Cup. We hosted the Brewers Cup competitions at the downtown location. And so I basically, for that whole weekend, it was Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I lived downtown. I was just there helping set up, helping volunteering a little bit, and then I competed as well. Wow. So I ended up placing 4th, which means I qualify for the next regional rounds, which will be in Denver in December, which I was not expecting that. I was just doing it for like the experience.
So now, like, what? And now is this pouring?
Like, so this is pouring. So this is like doing like a manual pour over coffee style. It's where you actually hold your kettle with the hot water and then you pour it over ground coffee in a kind of manual brewer. Which I picked something called the V60, which is just like a conical coffee brewer.
Now, did you pick that one over like a So is that like a nerd world that you
That's
can
nerd.
dive
in?
I can
get into it if you want me to, but yeah, I went with that one because it's like easy to use and that's what I use at home for the most part, so I'm more comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And I knew I could make the coffee taste good.
Yeah, like that's like the deeper magic of coffee.
Yeah.
Like, because I don't ever think I'm just a black coffee guy, just hey, hit me with the little squirt container, and we're good to go.
Right, yeah.
But everybody that drinks those higher level drinks, the drinks that are poured and everything, they all say Palace has the best, coffee, and which is it's like surprising whenever being based in Amarillo, which I think maybe has this characteristic of being like podunk or being backwoods or being this and that. But really, as far as coffee goes, we're like right there.
This is kind of a mecca for coffee. I mean, the great thing is we're right on I-40, so people are constantly traveling through. I get so many people in that downtown location they're driving, Route 66, and they're from like Europe or Australia, or it's people, from New York going to LA, or just all these people just come through and they're like, we just pulled up Yelp or Google and it's like, here's this here's this coffee place, so they come in. But yeah, like you wouldn't expect it in the Panhandle of Texas. And
Yeah.
we're really fortunate having Palace and Evocation. It's just like, man, it's really amazing.
And like the originals starting with roasters.
Yeah.
You know, like
shout out to roasters.
we've had like coffee being roasted in Amarillo for a very long time, which is kind of cool to have that like background heritage, you know?
Yeah. And even, I only know this as a little factoid. I don't know the whole history, but I know that I want to say Golden Light, like the original Golden Light restaurant, like decades ago, used to roast coffee.
No way.
Yeah, I haven't really gotten into the history of that or searched it out, but I know like they used to be a coffee roaster or something like that, like decades and decades ago. But
yeah, that's crazy.
So I mean, I guess we have more of a history of locally roasted coffee.
Yeah, that's interesting, man.
Just roasters.
Yeah, I always get anytime, or typically it's like, do y'all still ride horses? We get that question about Amarillo or saying that we're from Texas, you know, but.
Or like everyone wears a cowboy hat, right?
Yeah, and it's like, no, I don't think, there's a lot of cowboy hats.
Sure.
And there's a lot of functioning cowboy hats, you know? There's a lot of guys who are like genuinely cowboys.
They need it, you know?
Yeah, they're like living you know?
They're out there on the ranch.
Yep, they're doing it. So, that's cool. How long you been in the coffee game?
So, a total of about 4 years. I first started working at Palace fall of 2013, and then I was there for essentially like 2 years, and then I left to work at a bank for like a few weeks because I felt like I needed to get like a real job, a grown-up job, but I hated it, so that didn't last. So then I went back to Palace for a little while, and then I just at that point in my life I felt like I was getting a little stagnant, so I wanted to try and find something else. Then I left Palace, and then I ended up working in Evocation for like 6 months. So I just got right back into coffee.
Yeah.
And then in order not to feel stagnant again, like I changed jobs again, and I worked at the High Plains Food Bank for a little bit.
Oh, really?
For a couple months, but again, it was just like wasn't for me. So I ended up going back to Palace last year, so I've been back at Palace for the second time for like a year and a half now.
Oh,
so
dang.
Altogether, I have about 4 years of coffee experience.
Wow. Yeah. So now, how did you start? Was it just getting a job, or
it was just
or you been into coffee like?
I had so Palace opened in 2011, and I guess around that time, I maybe started drinking Starbucks and feeling like I was special. You know, like that first time you start drinking Starbucks.
The starter pack, dude.
Yeah, it's a starter pack. And it's like, you feel like, oh, Starbucks, it's fancy, special coffee. And so you kind of feel like you're getting into it.
Yeah, I'm getting the culture.
Yeah, like I started trying to drink coffee black. Because at that point, it was like, give me all the cream and sugar.
Oh, yeah.
But I started trying to drink black coffee and see what that was about, see if I liked it. So when Palace came along, it was like this new, different way of preparing coffee. So I just started trying to drink that, getting into it. They were doing the pour-overs and manual brewing, and I was trying all those. And people who worked there at the time, this was just when the Canyon shop was open. I would talk to them, and they would tell me about coffee.
Now, did you go to WT?
Yeah, I did. There from... That was another instance where I would go for a while and then stop and then go back for a while and then stop.
Yeah.
But yeah, I ended up graduating in 2013, fall of 2013.
Oh, nice.
It took me a while though, because I went to AC first, and I did that in like 2 years, got the associates, and then I was like on and off at WT for like 4 or 5 years. Because again, I couldn't figure out what I wanted.
Yeah. I feel like my wife did a similar thing. She went to school for a little bit, and then she took a break. And then when she like finally decided what it like truly was she wanted to do, she loved it. She was acing her classes. She was having good interactions with her professors, because she's no longer the kid taking classes. She's the adult taking classes.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so she's getting almost more bang for her buck. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I kind of, it's interesting. I think sometimes we like to imagine it's a failure if you don't cram it in as fast as possible.
Yeah,
That's
you're
almost
not
like
in
an
that
American
4 years.
mindset. Yeah.
It is, yeah.
Instead of just like, hey, take your time, figure out what you want to do, instead of spending a whole bunch of money and then having to figure out what you want to do. Like,
Exactly.
just be conservative.
That's kind of weird too that we expect, kids like 18-year-olds, maybe 19-year-olds to like know what they want to do, go to college, spend all this money every semester and like, just know and like go to these classes and get this degree program. And most people like really don't figure out their lives. No one ever really does, but
Yeah.
like have more of a handle, I feel, until you're like at least in your mid-20s to late 20s.
Oh yeah.
But we're expecting kids to go to college and like
Mhm.
figure it out. You've got like 4-6 years to do this.
Now, how old are you now?
So I'm 30. I just turned 30.
Okay, yeah. Oh yeah, that's right, 30. So I'm about to turn 30, and I've been having these thoughts that like, there's no chance I could have had the same thought at 20.
Mhm.
Like it's just such a different brain even than my 20-year-old self. So to expect the brain of a 20-year-old to make the decisions that now being almost 30, I don't even like. I'm almost getting more nervous making those decisions
Yeah.
because it's like, man, there's a lot of stuff you don't know. That could sneak up, and you see it all the time in the news. People losing their entire retirement, or like they made a decision a long time ago, trusted somebody, and could fall through.
Yeah. Bit them in the butt.
Bit them in the butt.
Yeah. That's the quote of the
That's the
podcast.
yeah. So I've got 3 things that like. Whenever I was trying to thinking about sitting down with you, that I was like, okay, I'm gonna break this dude into 3 things that I think about him, or that I kind of conceive. So you got your coffee, because a man's craft. That's what's interesting. It's more of a craft, like being a good bartender, being a good anything, being able to interact with people. To get you hone the craft over years, and then like any waitress. They're way better 4 years in than they are a year in because they honed the craft.
Yeah, exactly.
So I had like your coffee right there, and then of course drums, which you're the drummer for Mount Ivy. I've played Mount Ivy a couple of times on the podcast, and y'all got an interesting sound. And it seemed, are y'all all about the same age in the band?
Kind of. I think no, that's not true. So me and the keyboard player Starchild, I think we're the same age. Like he might be 29, but we're about the same age. And then everyone else is a little bit younger than us. I think Topher, our bass player, he's the youngest. He's like 23 or 24.
Is he really?
Yeah.
Huh.
So we kind of range from like 23 to 30.
Okay.
So
yeah.
We're all pretty similar then.
Yeah, I really feel like at 23, like that's probably the age that I paused at.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I'm still my 23-year-old self, in a lot of ways, but that's pretty cool. So I have that, and then I have philosopher, right?
Oh, thank you.
So
That's
like
really that's maybe too fancy a word, but
it's a fancy
word.
word, but I feel like the common man needs to reclaim the word philosophy, the word philosopher, even because I think sometimes it gets people don't think it's practical. But it's very practical.
Yeah.
So, and especially in understanding how you view the world and the forces that were acting on you in development. So one of the things I was going to ask you about is, so you started a blog.
Yeah, I just started a blog.
Yeah. Dude, that's one of the things I was going to ask you about, because I don't know if this is like a generational thing, because I suffer from probably the same way you do. I bet we have a lot of we could really resonate on. So like starting a blog, being super motivated about a blog, having a ton of ideas, and then it's like, I think the way my blog works is I get like 3 weeks, boom, 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 and then crickets, for a while. So that was one thing I was going to ask you is like, why did you start the blog? It would be the first question. It would be like the simplest way to like start.
Yeah.
So like, why did you start your blog?
Why did I start my blog? Because I'm trying to think how to start this. Basically, I grew up as a Christian, just super into God and Jesus.
Which denomination?
I grew up like non-denominational.
Oh, okay.
I went to the non-denominational, like evangelical Christian churches, just very standard, like, you know, the statement of faith is like we believe in the Trinity, and the Bible is the inspired, infallible Word of God.
Mm-hmm.
Communion, just like very kind of basic, but no. Every church was like independent,
Right.
So that's how I grew up until about 20 when I was 28-ish. No, it would have been longer than that. 2016. That was 2 years ago. Yeah, so when I was like 27 or 28, I began to like really question my faith and question God and question the things that I thought I believed. And so I ultimately ended up leaving faith and deconstructing my faith and going through this whole process of figuring out what I believed and what I thought. So anyway, so the past several years, as I'm going through all that process, I feel like I need to write about this and talk about it and say that it's okay to have these, because in this area, it seems like you need to be a Christian. You need to have a faith, or else you're untrustworthy, or people want to get you saved. But I wanted to say, like, no, this is okay. This is part of life. Like, however old you are, whatever stage of life you're in, it's okay to ask these questions, go through this process, and maybe you go through a period of faith deconstruction where you're trying to figure out what you believe or don't. And maybe you come out on the other end still believing, but in a different way. Or maybe you're like me and you come out not believing anymore. So I wanted to start a blog that talked about all that, talked about my experience, but also said, like, it's okay to have these conversations. That's what started it. That was essentially my first blog post, is like saying, kind of publicly stating, like, yes, I've lost my faith. Which most people who knew me already knew that at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have it online. I didn't have like a place where you could go see it publicly. I felt like I needed to do that. So that's why I started it. I think I made 2 posts in 2 months. That was in January and February, and then I haven't updated it since.
Yeah, that's kind of, it's funny, man. I've even been looking back at my blog. I started it a while back. Like, I got this little burst of, which it's actually kind of interesting because I've become a lot better of a writer. So it's fun to go back and read those old blog posts and be like, damn, I've come a long way,
It's like, I'm so much better now.
It was like, man, I thought I was doing something good there, but now I can look back and be like, gee, I wasn't doing anything.
Yeah.
But so it's kind of interesting, but even like looking back, it's blocks. Like, I'll have like, boom, where I put out 3 and then nothing. And then boom, where I put out 2 and then nothing. It's like these, and so I kind of wonder if maybe that has to do with the medium itself and like the ease of access, maybe the self-pace of it. Like, maybe if I had an external, like giving me prompts or something, I think I would be a lot more regular with it. But so, I don't know, I guess I was wanting to talk about blogs a little bit, because I don't really read that many blogs. Like, I kind of try to write a blog, but I don't read any blogs, So maybe do you read a lot of blogs?
I don't read a whole lot of blogs. I think occasionally, like, I'll find a blog post maybe, or one of my friends will write something, I'll read that. But I don't really have, like, any that I follow, like, religiously. Like, oh, let me see what this person says. So yeah, maybe that's it too. It's like we're not getting enough inspiration, maybe, or like something to kind of go for. I think too, at least for me, I'm more of the person that like waits for inspiration to hit, like the muse to strike, and it's like, oh, this idea, let me get it out real fast.
Right.
Which I think in something like blogging, which is really, it's just writing. It's really a practice you need to do every day, which I have tried on and off, not so successfully in the past. Like, just trying to write every day.
Yeah.
I'll go through periods where I do that for maybe like a couple weeks or a month, where I'm able to write a little something every day. But then again, it kind of like falls away. So I think with blogging, it's really something you need to do like weekly, like have a
Right.
schedule. Like I'm
Yeah.
gonna post a certain amount of words, every week or something.
Mhm.
Maybe a lot of our generation thinks that it's just about creativity striking in the moment, and then like you hammer out this
Yeah, that
masterpiece.
grind. Like, I think that's what's so funny is even the best authors that that I like to like read or whatever. If you really think about it, you only read a couple of their works. And if you imagine that they were working a lot, that means that most of their stuff is just disappeared. Nobody reads it, nobody cares about it, whatever. It's only like a few things that it's curated through time, makes it through time. So if you think even the great writers who were on their grind hard and were, honing their skill, and then the muse struck. And it was like a 1 in a million chance, like almost like LeBron James has to be LeBron James so that he can hit the game-winning 3-point.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like it's kind of a weird deal. I don't know if that makes any sense, or if that translates into our generation in any way. But so it's hard to be consistent and clear. I feel like in the blog formation, because at the same time, sometimes I get to ask myself like, who cares? You know
That's
what I'm saying?
the biggest thing for me. It's a self-doubt thing. It's like, there's plenty of other people like me doing this that are writing or they're podcasting. So like, what do I have to contribute?
Mm-hmm.
Who wants to hear what I have to say? Like, maybe I might even end up making it worse because I won't be clear enough,
Ooh.
and I'll just muddy up the water, which I think is BS. I think that's something like that you shouldn't think about.
I'm gonna pause real quick because I'm about to go turn off that AC.
Oh no, the dreaded AC.
Yeah. Do you need some more coffee?
No, good.
Okay. Yeah, I got us marked.
Okay.
about to get into it.
Nice.
All right. Oh dang. I guess I'll probably just edit that out on that video. Man, that kid, he's burning. He's burning energy that he doesn't have, man.
Right.
He's we couldn't get him down for a nap, so we've been fighting him.
Oh yeah.
Trying to fighting him for a while. Yeah, we're 24 minutes in, man.
Oh, nice.
So it goes by a little quicker than you think,
Yeah. I realize it's been almost half an hour.
You feeling good?
Feeling good?
Feeling good? All right. All right, we are back. The AC's still going, but we're just going to roll with it. It'll turn off in a second, so.
There we go.
And it turned off. And also, can you hear my kid? Have y'all, I don't know if, so Emmett's been raging pretty hard and just in the house. It's kind of fun. Like, I think eventually the goal is to have like my own separate studio,
Mm-hmm.
But it's also kind of fun having to work around the family, Like
it
almost makes it like more like I'm gonna look back or listen back on this recording and I'm gonna remember my 2-year-old son like raging till the end, like he's like been in crash mode for a while, like he starts operating differently, like he's not as nimble. All right, sorry about that. I try not to pause the episode because sometimes it throws off the groove, like at least mine. But anyway, man. So I wanted to talk to you about this deconstruction that you've been going through. What would you say was the trigger? Can you pinpoint it, or can you or like a generalized? Like what was the spark that lights the fuse? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it was. It would have been in 2014. 2014. I was going to a church that I still love the people, the pastor there. I still have friends from there. And I was leading a small group, like a men's small group. And I think I just stopped feeling anything, maybe. I would pray, I'd pray to God, and I'd hear the prayers, or the prayer requests like my guys in my group would bring every week. And it started to seem like, I don't know, no one was listening. And it's like, I noticed instead of praying about things, you could just like do something, you could change something in yourself or change something you were doing, and like you'd fix the problem you were praying about. You could, in a sense, just like live differently, and that would fix the issue rather than like praying about it and expecting something to change. It's that whole like thoughts and prayers thing. Like, well, I say thoughts and prayers when you can just do something to like change what you're seeing, and get a different outcome. And that started to make more sense to me. And I started to feel like, man, we're all these guys. Like, I love all these guys that I have this small group with. It's like they keep bringing we all keep bringing the same prayer requests. We all feel like we don't read the Bible enough, or we don't pray enough. It's always that. But I don't know. What if we just started like doing things different? What if we just started changing the way we live a little bit? The more I learned about just science and evolution and the universe and just how things work, the more it made sense. Like, we don't really need a creator necessarily. Like, it made sense that everything evolved and somehow the universe got into motion, but it didn't necessarily need like a god to put things into motion. It all kind of seems self-sustaining, like, and that's science in a sense started making more sense to me. The Bible is still good for like ethical issues and moral issues and loving your neighbor as yourself. I still believe that, and that's still great. And also, a lot of other religions have that as their core tenet too. So it's not like Christianity has a market on loving your neighbor or being good to people.
Right. So you were wanting to start you wanted to have a different conversation. Like, you wanted to have, because I think that is interesting. It's funny because to a lot of atheists, I'm a Christian. And to a lot of Christians, I'm an atheist. Yeah. Like, and I can be saying the same thing to both people. And one is saying, dude, you're a Bible thumper. And the other one's saying, dude, you don't believe anything. Like, you are a nihilist, Yeah. And it's like almost like that extreme, and I'll be saying the same point, But it is interesting because sometimes, like, I like talking about religion, and sometimes you have to revert into religious language, but you have to understand the language, and that's really where I like plead the fifth a lot of times, is because then you start hearing these experts in biblical languages and these scholars, and it's like, dude, what I'm reading on the page is not what it said. Like, not to say that there was any malintent in the translation or anything like that, but it's just a different language. Yeah. It's a different context, different social context, So it's almost like I don't even have the ears to hear or the eyes to see, because I'm not even looking at, like, it'd be like being mad that you're not seeing a flower whenever all you're allowed to look at is like a cartoon flower. Right, yeah. It's like, of course I don't see a flower. All I see is a picture, Yeah. It's kind of a weird deal. But it is kind of interesting because when you say that, it makes me kind of relate. I'm on the same page because it comes down to the vernacular that you're allowed to use. And like you were saying, let's stop praying about it. Let's actually fix it. And I think it's interesting because you talk to different people in different religions about what they mean when they say prayer. And a lot of times it's just talking through a circumstance, like
Yeah.
like kind of, and it's a good posture to put yourself in. Hey, there's probably things that I don't understand that are happening here. I'm gonna forgive anybody who's mad against me, and hopefully they'll forgive me my wrongings. It's kind of like a recentering of yourself. It's kind of interesting in that way as a therapeutic mechanism.
Yeah, it's totally like praying is still. It's like meditation, which has been scientifically proven to be good for you. I wish I meditated. I know I should. Like I think everyone should.
Oh yeah.
I don't because I get too busy or I don't give myself time to. But it's been proven to be good for you, and that's all prayer is really. It's meditation. But I think a lot of Christians don't see it that way because if you say that, then that sounds too new agey,
Right.
or it's like it's not. We're taught prayer actually moves mountains, or it's our way of speaking to God and asking for things to happen. And a lot of Christians don't view it as like, it's just a way of talking through things. It's a way of like you said, centering yourself, and that helps you. But a lot of Christians don't see it that way. They see it as a thing that's supposed to do something.
Right.
Like
So
you're supposed to see a physical result.
when you were deconstructing your faith, were you okay? Let's say I like to use the word demolish. When you're demolishing something,
Yeah.
right? What was it that you were demolishing? Was it your personal belief? Was it the institutional belief? Or was it that there is no such thing as spirituality? So which would demolish all religions. You know what I'm saying? So you got like the religion, then you got the smaller, and then you got the smaller.
Yeah.
Like what was it that you were aiming at?
It was more than I think it was kind of my personal belief, and in a sense it was like, because I felt like I dealt with like the institution, because I realized I could see institutional belief for what it was, which I feel like that's a whole other subject really, but for me I think I was demolishing my personal belief, like what I really felt in my heart and in my soul, and then also like the bigger, the grander, like, wait, is there anything? Is there any kind of spiritual thing? Is there a soul? So I was kind of doing like the smallest, most personal, intimate one and the big one of like, is there anything? Like, do I really think there's anything?
Like, where'd you settle on that? or and this is another ridiculous thing. Whenever we're talking about anything spiritual, even like you could be talking to the most devout Christian, it's a flow. It's not necessarily a point, So sometimes to define yourself by a point is to neglect that it's actually something that's in motion and allowed to be in motion, and by nature is in motion.
Yeah, it's still like a spectrum or a journey.
Right.
In one sense, I don't have all the answers, so I'm like open to whatever. I don't know for sure that there isn't some kind of spiritual realm or like a God or heaven and hell. I don't think there's a heaven or hell. But I'm pretty sure that if there is some kind of spiritual side to things, it's not what I grew up being taught it was. Like, there's God, and he has this son named Jesus, and there's a Holy Spirit, and there's heaven, which is where you go if you accept Jesus, or there's a hell for people who don't. And then this is how the system works. This is how what you have to say and believe in order to get to this place. I don't believe that's the spiritual realm at all.
You know what I think is interesting is that, like if you go to talk to like a biblical scholar, like and this is how I imagine it, is like imagine like theology is like a scale, like you start in kindergarten, you go to 5th grade, you go to middle school, like you kind of progress up these schools.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like the way that you explain it to a child, because you can't explain to a child like certain things, you have to use like you have to use stories, and you have to like show them like, this is what this is like. When you feel like this, that's how this person feels. Like, you're teaching them how to interact with the world. And humans, like, it's so useful to have a narrative.
Totally.
Like, we build stories, right?
Yeah.
We have to have a narrative. But see, like, once you like get to, do you know, have you ever heard of the Naked Bible podcast?
I think I've heard of it.
His name's Michael. I think his name is Michael Heiser. But like a real Bible nerd, like deep Bible nerd.
Yeah.
You start talking to those guys for very long, and you're like, okay, I believe it all. I believe it all, because they can take one small sentence and show you how it's attached to way in the past and way in the future relative to the literature. I mean, it's pretty incredible how these themes weave their way through, and so they can point out some like super interesting, crazy level stuff, but then you ask them what they believe, and it's not a simple answer.
Mm-hmm.
And their explanation isn't necessarily simple, and it's hard to dive that deep, like when it comes to really what you believe, like what's it called, epistemology, like what is it that you believe, how do you believe it, and why did the person that taught it to you believe that they believed it. It's pretty crazy. It gets deep.
Yeah, and it's even like, what is belief? You know what I mean? It's what is, like, in some sense, I know that I believe that people should be good and kind and love one another, and that's kind of like, that's where I've landed. It's like, belief is something that is some sort of conviction you have, even though you may not have proof that it's the best thing or the right thing or the true thing. It seems to make the most sense, and it's like, that's what I believe now. I don't know about anything I can't see or like sort of physically, tangibly interact with.
Well, you know how you said it was a spectrum? Because this is what I was going to ask you, is like science, there's certain things that science doesn't know what to do with.
Mm-hmm.
Like placebo, which means if somebody believes that they're doing something to get better, then they get better. It's like,
what?
It's like, oh wait, okay.
Yeah.
So now the way so that's the other thing, is there's a spectrum of belief. To say that I believe that I can make a 3-point shot the same as LeBron James is ludicrous. He has more of a reason to believe in what he believes, even though it's something that it's an action, it's a choice, it's throwing a ball at a hoop. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of one of those things. Like I question if when the church is explaining belief, if they're focusing on the right stuff, because like all the research into like flow states, with being a drummer. Do you ever consider yourself in like a flow state?
Oh, sure.
Where you cannot fuck up, like you can't miss a note.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You're just like, and then you start like thinking, it's like, what if I intentionally try to miss a note? And then you do it, and everyone's like, oh, that fucking worked, like, because you can't miss, you can't, and so like there's like, that's what I wonder, if we misheard the word faith, because when Jesus is approaching all these different people, he's saying, what you're doing is healing you, like, so you believe that you're taking the pill, you believe that you touched me, and you heal yourself, and so like that's what's always interesting to me, is like, almost we try to paint everything so righteously that it's like, a con man. The reason that the con man is such a prolific archetype in our society is because he's a badass. He can roll in, he can control everybody, he knows how to work people, he can make people feel good, he can make people feel bad, he can take, he's a manipulator in that situation. Well, if you have somebody that comes in and manipulates you and says, if you believe this, your cancer will go away, and he manipulates you into actually believing it, and your cancer goes away, it's the fact that you believed it, like, so that's what's always like kind of funny to me, is like, science can't necessarily disprove miracles, because the body does miraculous things as its like base protocol, right? Do I snap my bone? It builds a new bone. that's its base protocol. I'm not telling it to do that
Yeah.
shit. You know, its base protocol is to heal.
Yeah.
So if we can get out of our own way, you know, the body will heal itself, kind of a thing. You know, like that's what I always wonder with faith. You know, if we're, you know, like I have faith that people are going to listen to this thing. That's the reason we're doing it. Even though right now nobody is, like literally nobody is listening. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
it's kind of a crazy thing. So it starts to make you do these things. And like you were saying earlier, it's about, we want to progress as human beings. We want to progress as people. We want to become something better, right? Mm-hmm. So if I'm meeting in a group of people and we're all meeting up and we're saying we want to get better, let's let's engineer the circumstances to where we get better. Let's not just sit around and pray for things to change. Let's say, hey, what are you good at? What are you good at? Let's fix this. Let's not be depressed. Yeah. Let's not be sexually repressed. Let's not, like all these things that come up in men's groups, you know? Like people want to pretend like men don't need to talk about certain things or don't have problems with certain things, whenever really, like the society, the way we were brought up, you know, I mean, you see like, okay, I'm supposed to only treat women with honor and courtesy and kindness. But at the same time, you're going to flash this, like the sexiest woman that's ever existed on the planet, you know? Not sexy enough to not even, like, or they even like Photoshop her to be more sexy, right?
Yeah.
So we're getting slammed with like over-sexualized women, and then in our personal relationships trying to approach women in a moralistic way and, you know, trying to fit all these pegs, man, you know? It gets kind of crazy. What was I saying with that? Oh, healing the problem. You know, you got to talk about the problem to heal the problem a lot of the times. And you got to acknowledge that it is a problem. That's the other thing that I think sometimes I feel like the church environment, that scenario allows you to like dodge questions sometimes, you know? Like not acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to expect you to think that, and you're not going to expect me to think that. So we're not even going to talk about it. We're just going to talk about baseball or something, you know? Like, what?
Yeah, I think, and that was the thing. I felt like I couldn't bring any of this up. I couldn't bring up any of my doubts or my insecurities, or be like, guys, I know I'm the leader of this small group, but like, I don't know if I believe any of half of the things I say I believe or I'm supposed to believe anymore. There's a culture of sort of, I think my wife and I were talking about this today. It kind of turns into a club where you have to all believe the same thing or pretend you do. Don't ruffle any feathers. Don't bring up any of these hard questions. Just play along. And that's not how people function. That's not how people work. And now maybe I could have brought these questions up. I feel like I could have, and I probably should have. I ended up just like leaving. Like
sometimes I wonder if everybody in that group probably has the exact same feeling.
I really do. I really think like I wouldn't be surprised if they're
like nobody actually
pastors, pastors who are like closet atheists. You know what I mean, or close to it.
Well, I mean, you hear stories about it all the time. Yeah. Like Science Mike from The Liturgist, he was a pastor, and then he started thinking like, I don't think any of this is real.
He was an atheist for like 2 years or something while he was still in his Baptist church.
Right.
Shout out to The Liturgist, by the way, because that was a big help for me at that time.
Oh yeah, and that's actually, I think that's one of the things that we connected on pretty early is that I've listened to The Liturgist, and I haven't hit any points with, I mean, a lot of people that know me know that I'm just like generally a discontented person, like almost with everything is like, but I've never had any huge rebellion against the church. In anything other than the fact that sometimes it allows, it's just another coping mechanism. Whenever I really think people need to be pushed to that next question, like what do you do? What do you do? It doesn't even matter what you believe, what you think you believe, because you don't believe what you think you believe, right? Yeah. Like as I get older, I realize that's more and more true. Whenever I was 15, what I thought I believed, I didn't even believe.
Yeah, you can see that now. It's like, I didn't even believe the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I was getting out on the wrestling mat, and I didn't believe that I was going to win. It was like a joke, like me pretending like, like I'm going to win this. It was like I get out there and I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to win this or not, But at the time I was telling everybody, yeah, I believe it. Yeah, I'm going to win. It's kind of an interesting thing to look back and, kind of, you almost question your own motives, which is like, one of the questions. So actually, I'll hit this question first. So in your blog, you have couldn't hear his voice anymore. Like you realized you couldn't hear. So my question was going to be, what was hearing his voice? Like what? So you had a contrast there, right? You had a one way, and then you had the next way. So what was the hearing the voice? What was that stage, or like what was going on there?
When I couldn't hear his voice, man, I think it was. That's weird. It's one of those things where I go back now and I'm like, I know I never heard anything, but like, what was it that did bring me comfort when I would pray? Maybe, I don't know. I think it was maybe me telling myself what I wanted to hear in a way. Like I would pray about something and eventually I would have to make a decision. Like, I don't know, I'd pray about a job or pray about school maybe. Like when I was a Christian, like, should I go this route or take this class or like, and eventually I would just get to a point where I had to make a decision and then that would be like God was answering me. Or I would eventually start to feel some peace about something. And I was like, I interpreted that as hearing God's voice. And then I got to a point where it was like, oh, I think that's just me, like either finally feeling at peace or making a decision. And it's not really like I'm hearing anything. Or I would read the Bible and think, oh, this is God telling me this. But then as I started to question the Bible and like, wait, is this really like all completely true and all 100% God's actual written thoughts?
Mm-hmm.
That became less and less a source of his voice, and it was more like, I think nothing sounds like God anymore. Now it's just like, oh, I'm kind of free to do whatever I want, and I should make like a good, wise decision, or if I feel peace about something, it's just because maybe I'm, in a sense, like, not worrying about it anymore. Or
it's like a get your ass in gear voice.
Yeah.
Like everybody has that in your head where it's like, time to start working, time to stop, like let's get this going. Like, let's do this. And I think it is, I kind of was wondering, like, as you were saying that, I was thinking, like, how interesting is it if everybody has, like, instead of the way we grow up in Western, civilization or society, is thinking we have one self. We have this one self. But what if in reality you have like 10 selves? And maybe religion was coming in to identify the different like strata of personality that you have. Like, hey, you have this child. Hey, you have this, poor woman at the well. You have this like Roman soldier. Like you have all these different personalities in you. And you almost have to synthesize them, like through like a filter or something, and maybe that's what. So like you have a God voice in your head, the same way I have a God voice in my head, the same way, and that's part of the hardware almost, So like, because as you were saying that, because I don't know, I've had some friends who say that they've had like some audible experiences of having like God speak to them and having like these different experiences, but I've never really had that. I've had like feelings.
Yeah.
And like I one of the things that I think if like there were like a finger pointing towards God is like the little like bump you get after doing something nice for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Like whenever you genuinely did something like sweet for another individual, and like how you have that like almost euphoric wave that just like rolls over you.
Yeah.
It's like almost as like a when you're training a dog. Anytime you like click the clicker, you give them like some food, It's like, wow, that's weird because it's almost like God's like clicking the clicker, and then he's like giving me a treat, like, okay, reward, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's kind of like you're almost rewarded for like being nice, which is kind of it's almost in the hardware, It's almost like when you really break it down, being nice to somebody is really the only point that you can derive from life, because that's what makes you feel the best. Would lead to like love and like different things like down the road, So it is kind of interesting. Like I always, one of the things that I know has happened with me is that I've deconstructed what the narrative that was given to me as a child, and I've acknowledged that there's giants playing. There are giants at force. Like, so even intellectual giants. Like, be like me looking at physics and saying, "Oh, I understand physics." Like me like looking at Christianity and saying, "Oh, I understand this."
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like being a little baby amongst giants. It's it's a tough issue. When you really get to arguing like the religion. I guess that's probably with any religion, or any like institution, physics or something.
I mean, yeah, and it's even in science, like there are still different viewpoints on everything. I mean, there's different viewpoints on how the universe came to be and how life has evolved, and we have the two main concepts of sort of everything, or the quantum aspect, which is like all the quantum tiny, super tiny particles, and then there's relativity, right, which is
larger,
the larger size, and we can't like make the two. They both make sense on their own, but they don't work together yet.
Yeah, like supersymmetry and all that shit.
Yeah, it's like, and so we still can't figure that out, and then there's still different thoughts of like string theory, which is what some people think is like the absolute reality of the quantum world, but then there are other, and again, you can tell I'm like no expert on this, but
yeah.
I love all that, but there's still no hard like symmetry of all these viewpoints,
Right.
So yeah, which just goes to show like we're just creatures. We're essentially animals with higher functioning brains, and we're coming into this knowledge of how all this stuff works, and we're trying to make sense of it. I think I heard a quote, we are electrons contemplating other electrons, which is like kind of, Homo sapiens are the first time that's ever really happened, of us contemplating how this all works, like how we're even aware of all this. And I think that's what started to get to me. It's like religion is a lot of religion was saying, this is how this works. This is how life works. This is truth. This is reality. This is what you have to believe. And for me, it was like, but you can't say that. There's still so much we don't know. Like, there's still so much we're trying to figure out. How can you say that you figured it out in just a few thousand years, And that's what drew me more to science, not as like a substitute for religion, but just like as a worldview. It's like science is open to being wrong and to having to reinterpret things and rewrite things. And it seemed like religion was this, like, no, this is it. Like, we have this book, and you have to believe the book. Even though it was written thousands of years ago, you have to believe the book because they had the answers. And that's it. And I was like, no, like, I need to know that we can find something else or find something new. That started to make more sense to me.
And see, so it's always kind of funny because like science doesn't change reality. It just like sees it for what it really is.
Yeah, it's trying to see it and like test it and try to understand it.
See, and like, so that's what's interesting is like there's like a lens, right? So this is kind of how I think of it. Is like with science, you have these different lenses, right? So if I was going to look at this little tree, I could go in and measure it, and so like there's all these different ways that essentially I can see it, even if some of them are like conceptual,
Yeah.
Damn, I might have forgotten where I was going with that. Oh, lens. So like religion then would not necessarily be finding out truth so much as a lens on which reflects the reality. You know what I'm saying? So almost like that's what I've always wondered is these like prophets. That's the most interesting portion of the Bible that I don't understand anything about. Like my modern, like the current church system that I see doesn't really leave any room for like prophetic schools of like probably weirdos being really weird.
Yeah.
Like I imagine like Ezekiel, he probably had like a school after him, and I imagine everybody in that group was like don't
weirdos.
leave your wife alone
Yeah,
around these
seriously.
guys. You know, like they're.
Don't
I mean, not to say they're terrible people, but they're gonna be weird, dude. That's like you get like a mute math, or not mute math, like a, what is that called? Math rock.
Math rock.
You get a group, you get like, so let's say 6 of those bands together, right? That's a room of some unique individuals, right? You know, you got to be careful because certain things attract certain types of people. And Ezekiel's prophetic school probably attracted some like crazy people, you know. But we don't have that in our modern day society where it's like you really are encouraged to get as weird as possible, you know.
I mean, I think that exists. I think.
Do you think it's institutionalized though?
I mean,
because that's what's cool is like harnessing the weirdness. Like that's what a prophetic school was. It was like, and like a lot of the shamans, I've heard that the shamans, like there's not necessarily a concept of mental illness in hunter-gatherer tribes because if somebody's a weirdo, they give them to the shamans.
Yeah.
You give them to the weirdos. Like there are people who see spirits, right? They're downtown. There are a couple of people that walk around and they're seeing spirits, right? If you give that person to somebody who instead of saying, look, you don't fit into society, they say, ooh, welcome.
Yeah.
Like, welcome, you know?
Yeah, prophesy over me.
Yeah, exactly, you know? And so like I always...
I think what's interesting about that is like there were some, like at least in the Bible, there are some weird prophets who did some weird things. At least for me, the bigger thing about prophets is that they would call out injustice, which I think is, at least for me, that's what a true prophet does, is like call out injustice that they see generally from like the ruling class, the rich people, against the poor, the working class, which we still have those. Like we still have those prophets. That's still an important like type of person. You know, I think we were talking about narratives or stories earlier. That's still a thing that needs to exist, and they always do stand out in some way. But usually, they're like brave people who.
Well, they end up in like punk shows, or like, they end up in the backseat of a hip hop car or something like that. You know, like a Kendrick Lamar. You got a guy like that who comes out where you wouldn't say the greatest writer of our time. You wouldn't say, oh, he probably comes up from Compton going up through public school, you know. But then the greatest rapper of our time comes up through Compton and has all these, cards kind of stacked against him of being like a high-level intellectual. And then what does he end up doing? He ends up putting out this work that's like high-level intellectual work, you know. So it almost comes like from where you least expect it. And that's almost if you expect it, then you kill it, you know, like you stop the seed of... revolution, maybe? I don't know. Maybe it's like a revolutionary thing.
Yeah. I would say most revolutions were started by people who had enough, wanted to call out injustice and change things. And it's that thing of like, changing things and not like expecting your prayers just to do it.
So like when you say injustice, what is the scale in which you are holding something up against? Like people could say it's immoral and like refer to a scripture and say, see, this is what we all agree. This is what we all agree is we is a good thing. And this is the scripture that says this. So we shouldn't rape people. Or something like that. You know what I'm saying?
So what's mine is like not having that. I think it comes down to, and again, this comes from the Bible, but it also comes from other places. Like it comes from other religious scriptures, but it's like treat others as you would want to be treated, or love your neighbor as yourself. Be kind to one another. Like it seems as if people are all good to each other and love one another, everyone benefits from that. That's better for the flourishing of life upon the earth. Whereas if you have some amount of power over someone else and then you use that power to denigrate that person or step on that person, it only benefits one party, the one with the power. It doesn't benefit the other ones. And usually power is concentrated, so there are less people with power. So the majority of people get stepped on, and then only a few reap the benefits. That doesn't seem like a recipe for successful life or for the flourishing of life. Maybe a few, but then what happens is like people want to use that power to step on others, and that's not really truly love, right?
Well,
It seems like love is the, it's so cliche, but it seems like love really is the answer if we're kind to one another. So that's kind of my metric. It's like that seems to be the best recipe for a good life for everyone, which seems like that should be our goal, like everyone's goal, like everyone to have equally a good life and to not suffer. That's kind of my belief. Like I don't have a way to prove that, but it seems correct. So that's kind of where like I get that morality of like injustice is someone lording power over someone else.
So, like, one of the things that popped in my head while you were talking is, Dan Carlin. Recently, I was listening to one of his, and he was talking about, maybe it wasn't even him. I think it was him. I'm pretty sure it was him. But, one of the things that Dan Carlin was saying is if they hadn't have been Nazis, they probably would have won the war. Because they were Nazis, all the Jews fled. So all the high-level intellectual physicists fled to the United States. So, like, Albert Einstein, I think he was in Sweden, maybe, or somewhere like that. But as soon as the Third Reich came up and it's like, hey, it's bad news being a Jew up in this area of the world, he came to America.
Yeah.
And he was vital in making the A-bomb, which ended the war and won it for the United States. Mm-hmm. So if Hitler hadn't have been a Nazi, if he hadn't have been against Jews, he would have ended up with the bomb. He would have won the war. But since he isolated and neglected a portion of his population, he lost the talent, And that's what I was thinking when you were saying that, because you were saying it is good for one, like it's good for the guy with the boot, putting the boot on somebody else's neck. But the problem is both of those two people, like he's suffering in his own way, suffering maybe from a form of mental illness, suffering like because typically a person with a caring, open heart cannot stomp on somebody's neck. It's difficult for you to do something like that, So it's kind of one of those things like that guy, both of them would benefit by the guy not putting the boot on the neck. One, the guy wouldn't have a boot on his neck, and two, the guy wouldn't have to put the boot on the neck.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
To do that.
So it's kind of like one of those things. Like I try to imagine like separating from your faith, but when you're born in Germany and you're just coming up through the ranks and now you're at a concentration camp and you're a guard at a concentration camp, and you're like, this is pretty jacked up. I can't do this, Then you're looking around and it says, okay, me not doing this means I get shot.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like, I don't know, man. That'd be a tough situation for both people. I'd rather neither of them be put in that position, I don't know. That was a little bit of a digression rant.
No, yeah, that's another thing too. It's like, see, now that I'm in my position, I don't believe that there's like a purpose for anything. I mean, in some ways, I'm a nihilist because I don't believe anything has a reason. I don't think anything happens with a greater purpose. Things just happen. But like we are where we are today because everything prior has happened, and it's like, is evil necessary? Like, was all those terrible things? Was Nazism necessary? Slavery, like, to get us to where we are now, where we're more enlightened, or like, why did any of that happen? Like, suffering and what is it? And, it's almost like, why should I care, right? Like, if I'm just living my life and nothing really is affecting me, like, why not just keep living it oblivious? But it seems like that's a choice I can make. Not because I'm kind of rambling right now, but like, the choice to care, the choice to actively try to be aware of suffering and to hopefully try and mitigate it. That's a choice I can make for myself. And even though there's nothing that's really, in a sense, telling me to do that, or that I have to, or that I'll be punished if I don't do good to people, I guess that seems better. That seems like that's more within my control to like create that reality of like where I can do good and try to get rid of suffering eventually. And that's where we should all go towards. And that's like a way of control, in a way. Did anyone I said just make sense?
No, it definitely makes sense, man. It seemed
I'm
like
kind of
that's
talking through my thoughts right
yeah.
now.
It's a complicated issue, man. It's a difficult thing because like there's always this thing which I've heard it argued against atheists is like, and this is one of the things that I really believe is that it doesn't matter what you believe. Or it doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter what you think you believe. It's only what you actually believe. So I guess it does matter what you believe. It doesn't matter what you think or what you say you think. Because the way you believe is how you actually interact in the world.
This is how you actually act.
It's
physically
so it's an actual thing. It's like that's something you can judge somebody off of. You can judge them off of their actions, not by what they say they believe, Because, I mean, how cliche is it the preacher's having an affair and ends up a big scandal, Because it doesn't actually matter what he says he believes. It matters what he actually believes because that's what's going to govern the way that he actually acts, And so, really, it's sad for those guys because they're having to I shouldn't say it's sad for them like I have any pity on them, because it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, but it's almost sad like that they're pushed into a position where they're having to act like they're like hide portions of themselves and stuff like that. That's hell to me.
Yeah, totally.
Dude, having to hide who you are or who you think or what you want to do or what you want to be. I mean, I've never heard of somebody who's like having an affair and they're like, "Hey, this is the greatest thing ever." Like typically they're like, "Oh, this is something's dying inside of them all of the time." What was that?
I don't know.
Dying inside. I can't remember. You said you rambled, and then I maybe started rambling, and it went off the rails. But so you're science over religion.
Oh, and I did want to make this point.
Oh, okay, sorry.
It probably sounds like I'm saying science is better than religion. Like they can't code. I'm not a science. I'm not a binary type of person necessarily, where it's like science or religion. Like you can be a Christian scientist or a Buddhist scientist or whatever.
Do you think there's a next level of existence? Do you think like there's like another dimension of existence?
Oh, God, I mean, I don't know. Like I can't even comprehend what that would be. Is the thing.
See, like, because sometimes I think of this with fungus. Like the largest living organism on the planet's like this fungus, right?
Right.
And like you look at it, and it's like, could we even comprehend or define what it means by thinking, right?
Yeah.
So like, what if we're all, and I mean, this gets like a little bit like, what if, but it's like, what if we're just like simply, like right now, our level of existence is just the nodes in another thing's existence.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. It's like if the most basic form of consciousness is like a thermostat, like reacting, it's just literally reacting to temperature. And if it gets hot, the mercury rises. Like if that's the most base level of like reactionary existence. And then at this point, it's like humanity, with all the things we can do with our brain and all the things we can think and come up with and create and envision, like that span is pretty big. So imagine if you just took that same thing and scaled it from us to whatever that next thing is.
Exactly, yeah.
What is that?
Whoa, yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know.
See, so that's like kind of
that theory, possibly that could be.
See, it's almost like sometimes I feel like it's rough because people are throwing the baby out with the bathwater because it's like the current church system is boring. I don't ask it's not everybody. Well, I mean, not for everybody. There's definitely things, but as far as are people running into the churches or running away from the churches? I think it's pretty. I don't know. Maybe the stats have shifted, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty overwhelmingly people are running away from
I
the
think
church.
it's certain branches, like certain denominations. I think like sort of white evangelical churches are losing people. I think, if I'm remembering my stats correctly, I think like black churches are maintaining people. And then I can't remember like the mainstream. I think the mainstream denominations like Episcopalians and the other one.
Methodist.
Yeah, Methodist. They're like, I think they're losing people too. But the thing is, if church is just going to be a building where you go every Sunday and like see people generally exactly like you and gather for a 1 hour 45-minute sermon and sing some songs, like, yeah, that is boring. It's kind of like, what's the point of this?
Well, and to me, to me, it seems like if you truly believe in what you believe, you would say, well, let me get the smartest dude in the room and let me see if he knows anything that either confirms or I want to. It's almost like I don't understand why there's not this drive to like understand it more deeply. Say okay, if there is a God, is he scientifically detectable? Let's say that there's this supernatural being, right? This supernatural existence, and it's able to make a conscious decision on multiple levels. So it can make it on this highest level dimension, or it can go down to a cell and it can change the cell's decision, right? It's the code writer, right? So now let's say he's changing code on our level, right? He's interacting in the thing we call reality. Is there a way of measuring that something's changing in an unforeseen way, right? Because like that's what I always think of as like for instance. If I just throw this pen across the room, when did I make the decision to throw the pen? Was it 10 years ago that, was it starting a podcast? You can go like,
right.
But in reality, in practicality, I threw the pen, right? Because of general base reality. Now, if God comes in and right before I throw the pen, he stops the pen from moving, right? Mm-hmm. That's a change in base reality. And so like, maybe you could measure that shit. Maybe like there's a way scientifically to measure the cells in your body to see if they have a fundamental shift in what they're gonna do. Like it's an intervening act that was changed. So like if a ball's falling in gravity, we expect it to continue to fall unless a force acts upon it, right?
Right.
So the force acting upon it is what we measure as gravity. What if we could measure like God gravity, or
the God,
like the God
force.
hand, or like the God force, or something like that. So if you tell me, if somebody says, hey, there were miracles in the Bible, they happen to where God comes into the world and he changes something once you ask him to do that, I would say, okay, if you 100% believe that, then reality will reflect that. So no matter what lens you look at it through, it's going to reflect reality, right? So if you look at it through the science or religion or any of these different, it's going to look right. It's going to look the same, So if you look at it from one direction and it looks different, then there's a problem with your image. Maybe you're on a Focusrite or some shit. So like that's kind of the thing that frustrates me. And like whenever you were saying about advancing the dialogue, basically, you want to change the script that so when we sit in a circle, instead of me saying, I can't get my life together, I can't keep my girlfriend happy. Instead of us saying, well, let's get together and let's pray about that. Instead, let's have the conversation of why are you such an asshole. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right.
Like, what are you doing? You drinking a 12-pack a night? And playing video games for 3 hours or something like that. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't know. I know a lot of people who drink a 12-pack a night and they function super high level. So it's nothing against like beer drinkers per se, but you know what I'm saying? Like, that's one of the things I like about running I've said on the podcast is it's like a scale to hold yourself up against.
Mhm.
You know, like it's a level that I can't want the change. The change I have to like do the change. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not gonna get faster by wanting to be faster. I'm only gonna get faster by trying to run faster. You know. So it's kind of an interesting like I like those type of activities because there's
actually an actual thing you can measure.
Exactly.
Like an actual scale to hold yourself up against.
Exactly. And that happens in your life whenever you say, I decide I want to be more successful, I want to try to do something new, I want to push myself. You push yourself and then you're more successful because you're pushing yourself. So it's kind of one of those things like if you're praying and you're saying, hey, I want to be a better person, I want to be nicer to people around me, and you're praying it and you're thinking about it and you're meditating it, then probably your force is going to change. Like your output, your energy output is going to change. You're going to start getting something different back, possibly. I don't know. Does that make any sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Am I rambling?
No, I don't think so.
Okay,
it's good.
But yeah, I mean, it was interesting. I mean, one of the things I like about podcasts is you can kind of tell what a person is thinking based off of what they choose to listen to regularly.
Mm-hmm.
So like whenever you say you listen to the liturgist, I've met a lot of different people that listen to the liturgist, and it's almost like this like weird state of like not wanting to let go of Christianity, like wanting to still hang on, wanting to like maybe salvage the beautiful, these like deep relationship nourishing aspects, while leaving behind the hollow rhetoric, maybe we could call it.
Yeah, that's a great term, rhetoric.
Hollow rhetoric, and but that's the cool thing about church is, and like you were saying, there's no other spot in society to where you can find a group of people who are choosing to show up at a place and give money to be better people. Like whether the institution is delivering all that or not, the act is still beautiful. The practice is still beautiful. Like getting together as a community and all these things. Like, so that's one of the things I wonder is like, maybe we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Maybe it like, I actually don't understand why an atheist wouldn't go to church.
Yeah.
Like the way I view church, what I would classify as, or even what maybe Jesus would classify as church. I guarantee you, there was a slew of people up in hanging out with Jesus that said the Jewish way of thought is ridiculous and stupid. I mean, the Jews killed them for a reason.
Yeah.
It wasn't because they were like, cohesive in society. They were butting up against. There was like a punk band coming to town,
and just screwing everything.
Yeah, it's just like you're screwing everything up, blah blah. And so I guarantee you that there was a lot of people who had a variety of beliefs. It wasn't a homogeneous it wasn't like a everybody believed the same thing. I imagine that those first churches, and that's why we have all the letters from the apostles, is because the first churches were Wild West style.
They were just trying to figure it out.
Yeah, everybody's just doing it. You're just hammering this thing out. You're gonna do it, And so I always wonder. Like to me, I feel like Christianity has done such a. You know how you were saying about the boot on the neck. We were talking about the boot on the neck of the prisoner. I think Christianity has lost such a vital resource by making it not okay to be an atheist and show up.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you have those atheists showing up, that's what really strengthens, it strengthens them. And
you need people to ask questions, and then that's going to get you thinking about the things you're saying. And I think so much of church, so much of Christians, like especially in this area, so much of belief is kind of just inherited. It's like people just inherit their parents' faith or their peers' faith, and they just keep going, and it's like the things they say they believe are just because that's what everyone else says, that's what they've heard, it's the lessons they've been taught. And everyone's busy, everyone's, in this day and age, everyone's working or multitasking or working multiple jobs, so it's like a lot of, maybe there's not as much deep thought going into these big issues of belief, because everyone's busy like working, just trying to make a living, and then you go to church to kind of chill out for a bit and maybe reset, and it's not really a place where you're going to wrestle with really deep thoughts. It's just like a place to go to see your friends, people like you. So it's not a place where you're gonna like question everything in a sense. But if churches were more welcome to that, to people who did have these questions or people who didn't have the same belief, it might get everyone like talking about this and asking more questions and like saying, hey, why do we believe this way? Why is it this way and not this other way? You know.
Well, and it's interesting because it's like it makes it to where you can't believe what you believe just because you believe it. You know,
Yeah.
like I can't say, well, I believe this because of this, because they're like, well, where does it say that in scripture? It's like I don't know if it shows.
Yeah, I don't know.
This is what I've like experienced in my life. When I'm an asshole, people are mean to me because I'm an asshole. No wants to deal with me, right?
Yeah.
So I know for a fact that one thing that I can do to advance my standing and advance my success in the world is not be a jerk, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, now we can agree on that without going to any scripture, because we have this real world experience, right? Like that's one of the things that always bothers me is like the knock and the door will be open. You know, look and you will find. It's not hidden. It's not this big, crazy, cryptic thing that you have to like struggle with. And it's like, do you have a better life, what you would define as a better life, being an asshole to everybody or being really nice to everybody? Oh, okay. Well, what happens if while you're being nice to everybody, somebody comes along and they slap you? Well, it's more beneficial for me to say that guy's an asshole and he's not nice to anybody and walk on and still be nice. So the next person that I see, I'm still nice to them, right? Like it's a worldview that is beneficial throughout, you know? So there's all these things about Christianity that I feel like even if you're an atheist, you can say, oh, well, if you agree that you don't want to slap somebody and I agree that I don't want to slap somebody, well, then we can sit in a room together and we can talk about how to become a better person, right?
Yeah.
And now if you say you believe that there's a God, or I say I believe that there's like Vishnu, or I believe in the Abu Dhabi aliens, you know, from Sector 9 or whatever the fuck. I'm just making that completely up. But you know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter what you say you believe or what you say you think.
Yeah. How are you going to treat that person literally sitting right next to you?
It's just your output. That's all that really matters is your fruit, you know, or whatever, you know? So it is kind of interesting, man. I've always thought that. Like when one of my friends says, well, I can't go to church because I'm an atheist. And to me, it's like, do you think that everybody that goes there isn't, like, people maybe say that they believe, but like you were saying earlier, like how many people, I've always wondered that, you know, like sitting in a room and I'm having a thought and it's a dissension thought. It's a thought that's like basically not agreeing with but I don't say anything, right? Yeah. So then I'm sitting there and I'm like looking around, I'm like, how many people in this circle are all having the same dissension thought, but just nobody's saying it because they don't want to offend the other people.
Yeah.
Whenever actually, it almost like unites you in the fact that you're not saying anything. You know? Maybe that's why we all do it. Maybe that's like the struggle is like everybody's like, shit, he wants to say something, he's not saying it. I want to say something, I'm not saying it. So we're actually all repressed. Like
we're all repressed. We have solace and we're all repressed together.
But
we don't really know.
But can you avoid that, you think? Like, do you think, sometimes I wonder if, you know, like the whole hero's journey argument, you know, like that, you just have this thing where like no matter how you're born, you're going to have this dogma. And then eventually throughout your life, you'll hit an age where you realize that it's somebody else's dogma and you have to establish your own dogma. Then you go on this like, you know, this journey, right? And then you go all these places and you think you're having all these adventures and then you settle back at the exact same place, you know? Like, it's crazy because like the house I'm living right now, I live across the street from a Church of Christ and I live across the street from the elementary school I went to. It's like, dude, I'm literally sitting right back where I started.
Yeah.
Like, I'm in the same vicinity as where I started, you know, but you had this large journey, and I would say I'm a very different person. So, like that's, I guess, one of the things that I think is interesting, because I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm, I haven't deconstructed the institution, necessarily. I've just reimagined the institution. And then I'm making That's having a 2-year-old in the house. Eventually, folks, I don't know. I think that the camera's still going, but eventually I'm gonna have a studio, and we're not gonna have little baby noises like that. But eventually,
Okay,
he's
it
gonna
makes
be a
it
little older
exciting.
too.
Yeah.
It does. It kind of adds like a little bit of a flair, a little bit of
Yeah,
like
it's a little bit of real world.
yeah,
like, hey,
little unedited,
grittiness, yeah.
grittiness, yeah.
It's a 2-year-old in the background.
Oh, dude. And he's a maniac, man. I can't believe he's still awake. It's almost 4 o'clock. Dude, he takes a nap usually around 11:30. He hasn't napped it all the day. He's pushing hard. He is pushing hard.
Yeah.
But they hit dude, that's the thing that's weird about little humans, man, is they hit these growth spurts where they have no energy, and then they'll get out of the growth spurt, and then they all of a sudden have all this energy that they're not using to grow. You know, it's like
Whoa.
real crazy, dude. He has these like swings. It's like crazy to imagine. And I guess we maybe have similar swings.
Probably.
Being adults, it's just we cover them up, or like we can control the equilibrium a little bit better. He has no control, dude. He's either 100% happy, he's in the weeds, you know, like he's crying, screaming. That's like, oh, you know, what is this kid doing? You know, like, come back over here, please. Like, little savage being. But okay, man. So let's see where we at. We're at an hour and a half. So it's actually flown by. We've covered most of those questions. I was gonna ask you something about drums. Did you feel like you had like how long have you been playing?
About 18 years, right? 2018. Yeah, I started in 2000 when I was 12.
Dang.
So yeah, almost 20 years, 18
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
So
And
crazy
so has
to
that
think
been
about.
like were you instantly good at drums, or is it something
No,
like a labor
I
of
was
love?
I had to work at it. I mean, I was that kid that was always banging on things and like trying to play along with stuff, but I definitely had to practice and work at it when I got a drum set. So
How much of it was intellectual versus like just muscle memory?
honestly, it's all intellectual at first. Like you have to really think about, because the thing about drums is you're using all 4 of your limbs, so the natural state is like everything kind of goes together.
Mm-hmm.
So the first part is like breaking everything up, where you can like, do like eighth notes with your right hand, and then quarters, with your say right foot, and then just play the snare on 2 and 4 with your left hand,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're using your left foot to open the hi-hat like on beat 1. So like they're all doing these different things. So that's a big learning curve to get all that to function independently. Now once you can do that, then it becomes muscle memory. Then it's just like the easiest thing in the world to do that. But then there's like more advanced things where you're trying to do weird beats like in different time signatures, and you're having to think more, but as you do it, it becomes easy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, but it all starts out as like an intellectual exercise. But now
Is that part of what you liked about the drums?
Um,
Like, did you like pushing yourself? Like,
yeah, I think so. I think I liked that challenge. I like trying to work to get all my limbs to do something different. And really, the biggest things I just like playing them because they're so physical. Like you have big motions that all your limbs are doing, and to me, it's the most fun instrument.
yeah.
At least as far
dude.
as playing like rock music.
Whenever I'm at a live show, I always end up watching the drummer.
Yeah.
Like that's just like almost every single band that I've ever seen. I mean, occasionally you'll get like a guitar player that's kind of doing something like compelling,
Yeah.
but there's not a whole lot of movement that like translates into noise. Whereas with a drummer, every movement is translating into noise. So when you really see them all spidering out behind a kit or some shit, it really like almost brings you more into the music. Like you almost hear it more because you're seeing the music as well as
saying the visual kind of accompaniment.
And it's so cool because it's like a dance, like an intentional dance. Like when you see somebody like grooving, and it's like everybody wants to groove, but it's like typically that's not conscious. But like a drummer is like a conscious groove. Like so the way that they're moving, it's almost like relaxing to see that. That sort of. What would the term be? I don't know. It's just something about seeing a drummer in the groove when they're hitting their notes and and you can tell that's what's super cool about a drummer is they're holding like the ground level, but they can still build soundscapes within the ground,
Yeah.
you know? So like they're doing one thing and building it, but then like a really good drummer will throw in these like added little bits of flair that are independent of the base layer.
Yeah.
And it really actually like makes it all more full. It like kind of commands the space a little bit better, like maybe frames the space is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, I've always like, and the other thing is like all of the best musicians that I've ever known, they all gravitate towards the drums. That might not be their main instrument, but they're all like, dang, I gotta sit behind a keyboard. Like I've gotta understand this. Like I've gotta be able to do this. Like it's almost like a trick, or like something that every great musician that I've known has in their repertoire. They can like sit down, they can like function adequately at a piano and a drum kit. Those are like the two things. I think if you're gonna teach a kid music, drum kit, piano.
Yeah.
Figure out the rest later. You know, you're gonna have to figure it out anyway.
Yeah.
You know, you're gonna have to ask yourself and kind of learn your style or whatever. You know. So how would you say you have a particular drum style, or would you say that you are like non-genre based? Like, do you think?
Yeah, so I grew up playing like worship music, which is essentially rock music, and jazz. I guess jazz came a little bit later because I didn't really play jazz in not elementary, like high school, but when I got to college, I got played in the WT Jazz Band. So I got my jazz chops there. So it was sort of like that combination of, essentially rock.
What's his name?
Jazz.
Steven Ronk or
the bass player?
Yeah, what's his name?
Steven Ronk. He's I think he lives in Austin now.
Okay,
but
dope,
he was so good. Man.
Did you play with Jeff Coffin when he came?
No, I didn't get to play.
Dang! I saw that. That was awesome.
Yeah, I was that one.
And that was the WT Jazz Band that played with him.
Yeah, that was Ben Hilton who played drums. He's a really good drummer.
Yeah.
He's a great drummer. But yeah, like so, jazz and rock is really like my main influences. So I guess I had my own unique style from playing all that. Worship music and rock and jazz throughout the years. So I don't know what my style would be. Hopefully, good.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah, you're an amazing drummer. I mean, that's and the fact that's one of the things I think that is so cool about you and like the little dive I took into your social media is like it almost seems like you can play in any genre. It seems like you've sat behind several different types of bands. You know?
Thankfully, I've been fortunate to play for a lot of different groups and a lot of different people. So the number one thing to do is listen. If you're any musician, but drums, I just, as a drummer, that's what I try to do is listen and play appropriately for every style. And the thing you don't want to do is overplay. Just like, what's the base level of what I need to do for this style? This sound. And then you can kind of begin to throw in those little, like you were talking about, those little framing things, those little like peaks and valleys of just like, little fills or little things. But like the bass line needs to be, you need to provide that groove for everyone to rest on. So.
Well, that's what I always think is super cool about musicians. It seems like as they develop and as they grow, they go towards less, not necessarily more. So like you see bands and they start like even I think like John Mayer, he goes from like a pure shredder to on like Continuum where he's like you can tell he's like exploring just like space and he's kind of trying to he could rip something, but he chooses to hit only a few notes and let them ring for a while, and he almost gives it breathing room. It's always cool whenever I like listen or I hear an artist that's really like about that. It's like how can you and what is it that you're trying to like get to? Like what is the base of the music?
It's like what's the most simple beat I can play without being like so many drummers think they need to like play a fill like at the end of every measure or something. I'm like da da do do da da do 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 da
Um,
do da da do do do. It's just like everyone should like start with do da do da do da. Like just sit there. You know what I mean? Like just a straight ahead like backbeat. Snare on the 2 and 4, kick on the 1 and 3. Like that is the most simple like rock beat, and I feel that's kind of where almost you should start. You know what I mean? So that's what I mean by bass. It's like, what's the simplest thing I need to do for this style? No frills. And yeah, I think the older I've gotten, the less I've tried to do. Because I realized my younger days, I would just fill so much and try to play so many things, and I would like having a lot of little cymbals and splashes and lots of drums, and I realized, man, I need like a snare, a kick, 2 toms, hats, ride cymbal, maybe a crash. You know what I mean? And the music I listen to, I like hearing drummers who just play more simply.
It's like transcending your ego.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of having to show all the tricks you can do, don't do any of the tricks. Like that.
Exactly, yeah.
That almost takes more control because you have to like suppress the show off. You have to suppress the I want everybody to look at me.
Yeah, if you feel you need to show off and you want everyone to look at you, that's a sign of immaturity.
Right, exactly. And it sounds like immaturity.
It sounds like immaturity. The more comfortable you are with yourself and the more maturity you have, the more you realize, man, I just need to play what needs to be played. And if there's a moment for me to shine, if I have my time, then I can show off my tricks or whatever, my things. And then it's right back to just providing what's needed.
To the grind.
Yeah. And that's also like a life philosophy too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not just for drums, but it's like the more confident you are, the less you have to do. You know, the less you have to show off. Just, you know, do what you need to do.
I heard somebody, they were talking about meditation, and I think they were talking about Ram Dass. I think it was Pete Holmes possibly. But what they were saying is, it was Pete Holmes with the Avett Brothers. He was interviewing the Avett Brothers. And one of the things he said on it was, he said, when you're meditating and you're an artist, sometimes you have these ideas that pop up into your head. And people want to stop meditating to write down that idea. But part of meditating is letting that idea go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think it's Ram Dass is what he was saying, that he was speaking on this. And he was like, oh, ye of little faith. Like basically saying, you think you don't have faith that you're going to have good ideas. So anytime you have a good idea, you have to treat it like it's a gold nugget instead of saying gold nuggets come at me all the time. Yeah. Like, no, I don't have to end this conversation so that I can jot something down and not a note. You know, It's like, dude, let your time be dedicated to what your time is being dedicated to, and allow that brilliant idea to go. Allow that business idea to go, and it allows you really to focus on some stuff, you know? Like, typically, I don't feel like I focus enough. That's one of my faults, is it's like, dude, if I just focused more, if I just, like, got in instead of chasing all these rabbits, you know, I just sit down and maybe, like, plant some carrots or something, you know what I'm saying? Like, get it to come to you instead of chasing it. I often feel like I'm chasing the thoughts. But yeah, it's like the ye of little faith type thing, you know, where it's like, allow that idea to come to you sometimes, you know, you don't have to chase it.
Yeah.
I don't know what I was saying about that. Where I even got me wrong. So we're talking about your drums, dude. You had that beautiful part about like allowing the ego to kind of drop away.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually it's like, dude, that's what really fulfilling that role is.
Yeah.
Man, that's cool, dude. We're at an hour 39. We'll pull the plug.
Cool.
We'll do it again.
Sweet, man.
We'll start doing. That's one of my goals with once I get an actual studio, is I want to be able to have regulars. Where it's just like, shit, man, what are you doing Thursday afternoon? Nothing. Okay, I'm not either. Let's get together and record a podcast. Let's just do it, you know, and kind of start doing it more often, man. That's the thing, is podcasting, the same as anything, is difficult unless you're doing it on a regular basis and being consistent with it. Which reminds me, you have sort of started a podcast, right?
Yeah, I have. Again, it's that thing. one interview I've done with one of my good friends. I recorded an interview with him several months ago, and that's the only thing I have recorded so far. But it's like I've created like a Facebook page profile, and like I have everything like set up, ready to go, and I've had some ideas.
The boat is built.
The boat's built.
It just has to sail.
You just need to crack the bottle of champagne on the hull. And set it off. But yeah, I mean, I've been wanting to do a podcast for probably about as long as I wanted to have a blog.
Why was I was the same way. Almost as soon as I started hearing podcasts, I was like, I want a podcast. Like I instantly felt like drugged to it. But what was it that you would say about it that like attracted you or like really like made it something you wanted to like pursue?
I think it's the idea of talking to other people. It's this it's a way to get your ideas out and to talk about what you want to talk about and cover what you want to cover. And it's, I mean, in this day and age, it's so easy to do. It's just like get a relatively cheap mic, or you can use your phone or whatever, your computer, and use a free software to record it into and do some quick editing, and then you can throw it out there. And it's like that easy, but it's a way to, and then find other people who are interested in what you're interested in. So it's like, and I feel like most people probably want to talk and they want to get their ideas and their opinion out. So I think that was what interested me. So
yeah, that was kind of my thing too. Is I was like, man, I was coming across people all the time, and I was saying to them, you should have a podcast. You should have a podcast. Mm-hmm. Oh man, you'd have a great podcast. Oh, you should have a podcast. I was saying it to everybody, and I was like, damn, if I'm around all these people that should have podcasts, then I probably should have a podcast.
I should probably have too.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it's like if I'm already around them, and it's like nobody's podcasting these people, like harvesting them. Sometimes I think of it like you sail your boat, right? But the podcast, the platform, the format, that's only the ship. You still have to bring something in from the ocean.
Yeah, exactly.
You still have to be productive somehow. And that's what I think I like about podcasts, and I also like loathe about it as well, because it's like you're only catching the fish that you're throwing the net for, So like it's kind of like one of those things, if you're not catching big fish, it's probably because you're not throwing a big net, It's kind of a weird way of saying that, but okay. So we'll end the podcast. First thing I would like is just do your plugs. You got some stuff, right?
Yeah.
Throw out your plugs, man.
Okay.
Mount Ivy.
Yeah. So my band is Mount Ivy, and we actually have a show next Saturday, the 18th. We're playing at Golden Light. It's going to be a sort of a joint birthday celebration with the Golden Light. I think it's the 10-year anniversary. Is that right? I think so. I could be getting that wrong, but it's also ND806, their 11-year anniversary. So they're kind of throwing something together. So there'll be several bands playing at the Golden Light Saturday night. Mount Ivy's one of them.
Nice.
That'll be good. We're recording an album.
This will be y'all's third album or second album?
This would be the second LP. We've had 2 EPs. I think we've had 2 EPs. This would be the second long play record. What else? I need to give whom I haven't even talked about. I feel really bad. My wife, Angelina. Mm-hmm. She's an amazing photographer. Short-eared dog photography. She's on Instagram, Facebook. Yeah. I need to give her a shout out. She's awesome. She's amazing. What else? That's basically it. Come see me at Palace Coffee.
Check out your blog, right?
Check out my blog
through your Instagram. Right there in your Instagram, you got the link.
Yeah, I got the link. John-Ruben Cares.
Oh, that's Instagram. John-Ruben Cares.
Yeah.
All right. Nice. Okay, and then do you got anything else? Any other ones you want to plug? Anything else? That's it.
That's all I got.
The way I chose to start ending the show is by asking you 2 questions. One is, what song would you like to have play out at the very end? And the other question is, how do you define success?
Okay. Oh man, I wish I had this I wish I would have had that song ready.
Yeah, I sprung that on you. So I tried to
That's
text my
alright.
guests early, and I don't know
I
the
think I
space.
should have known you were going to do that. I should have had something ready. Um, this is a so this is I'm going to ask you to play my friend Broderick, who's the singer of Mount Ivy. He has another project, a solo project called Vamping, which is
Okay.
awesome. You should play Alto Vista, which is the first track off of his first release, um, which is called Desert Flowers, I think. Oh man, I should know that. Anyway, it's the first track off his full length release, which is on. I think it's on all the streaming stuff, on
Okay,
Spotify and all that. He's about to release a second album, and I love it. It's not just because he's my friend, but like it's a really good project. He
I've
does
heard
it
a
all
lot of
himself.
people say that his solo stuff is amazing.
Like he records it all himself, mixes it, and he does like all the artwork and everything.
Nice.
And like lyrically, it's beautiful and amazing. So I'm gonna ask you to play that one.
Cool. Yeah, definitely playing that.
And then your second question was, how do I find success?
How do you define success? It can be as like for instance, one of the ways that I define success is like, so, and this is kind of a goofy thing, we're trying to potty train Emmett. So whenever we go outside, we just strip him down naked. That way, he can teach him to go pee on the fence or something like that.
Yeah.
Just so he understands, like, oh, I control this thing, right?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of funny, like, I was thinking the other day, he was peeing on the fence, and I was like, it's strange, but this is how I define success. You know? Like, I got a little 2-year-old baby, you know, I got a woman that I love, and he's peeing on my fence, you know? It's like a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
You know? So that's kind of how I define success. So you kind of to give me an example.
Okay. At this point in my life, I think success would be, how I would define it is, I think it would be being content with yourself. Being content with yourself and where you're at, not like complacent, where you're just, this is the best it's going to be, but like being happy with yourself, being happy with where you're at in life, and having goals that you're moving towards and achieving, hopefully, which is, that's not necessarily where I'm at right now, but I think that would be success if I can get to a place where, like, almost, you know, mentally and spiritually, like, I'm content with who I am, where I'm at in life, and I have goals I'm reaching towards and striving towards. I'm trying to become better and better. That's success.
Yeah,
That's
like sitting into the struggle,
Mhm.
like actually being like, all right, this is it. We're about to go. You know, got a lot of work to do, but also I'm still here. It's kind of a cool way of viewing it, man. So, well, cool, man. Well, I greatly appreciate you coming by.
Yeah, thank you
and
for asking me.
so until next time,
Till next time.
say goodbye to the people if you want to. I need a like a sign off. You know, Pete Holmes. He has keep it crispy.
Keep it crispy.
Keep it crispy. He has a sign off, but maybe I'll work on that. I'll work on that way. It's not like so much of just like a, how are we gonna say bye?
Yeah, like that awkward. How are we gonna do this? It's just like, okay,
maybe have something. Hey, here's what you gotta say. You know, give people an out. So, but yeah, I'm always terrible. I don't even know what I usually say. So, with that said, peace out. All right, dude. That's the episode.
Dude, that's awesome, man.
Hour 49.
that's a lot.
It goes by quicker than you think, huh?
That's crazy.
So yeah, that was a good one, man. I felt good about that one.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully you got some good material.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that'll be good, man. That's gonna be.
Do you go back through, like, listen to the whole thing and edit it all?
No.
Or you just like
No, I don't.
publish?
Yeah, I don't edit at all, man.